What if your survival depended on taking down a deadly Arctic wolf? No guns, no spears, just a stick, and a hunter, standing alone in the snow. Armed with nothing but a hardened stick, the Inuit face off against the Arctic wolf. Now, the Arctic wolf isn't your average suburban pup. These are apex predators built like furry tanks with teeth, surviving where most creatures would turn into popsicles in minutes. So how, in the name of frostbite, do the Inuit take down the most cunning snow assassin in the Arctic with nothing but a stick and sheer courage? The answer is colder than you think. Spoiler, it's not about brute force. Before we get to the stick, let's talk about the wolf. This isn't your grandma's German Shepherd. Arctic wolves are the Navy SEALs of the animal kingdom. It's a 120-pound bundle of muscle, fur, and pure predatory instinct that Inuit hunters had to face. Arctic wolves could easily survive in the freezing Arctic, along with the Inuits, and this was because of many things, starting with their gorgeous white coat. It isn't just for Instagram, it's for survival. The white fur is the perfect camouflage against snow, and they have a double-layered fur that is so thick, scientists discovered that wolves could sleep comfortably at -70 degrees Fahrenheit. Arctic wolves also have some pretty impressive accessories, like smaller ears and muzzle than other wolves, which can prevent heat loss. These aren't your lazy, scavenging coyotes. Arctic wolves are the chess grandmasters of predation. They have pack tactics, as they don't just chase dinner, they orchestrate it. While one wolf distracts, another flanks. When the prey returns, 3 more emerge, like furry ninjas. It's less hunt and more military operation. Arctic wolves also have a lot of biting power. Their teeth have enough force to crush a caribou femur like a Pringle. They bite through frozen seal hides like tissue paper and easily attack other wild animals in the Arctic, even polar bears, musk ox, and crocodiles. While humans would die in the Arctic in hours without gear, wolves thrive thanks to evolutionary cheat codes. They have fur-covered feet with built-in blood heaters, which prevent frostbite while providing snowshoe-like flotation. The Arctic wolves also have fat reserves, which is like a built-in emergency food supply when they can't access food or prey in the Arctic. Arctic wolves need up to 5,000 calories a day to survive in the Arctic, so they're always on the lookout for food. But when there's nothing to eat, they can go weeks without eating. And then, down 20 pounds of meat in one sitting afterwards. Understanding this predator is the key to defeating it. The Inuit were pretty much outsmarting the Arctic wolf because they knew that it could smell prey from 2 miles away, calculate wind direction instinctively, and easily survive in the freezing Arctic. Would you be able to outsmart this kind of predator? The Inuit could do this every day without dying. Let's address the frozen elephant in the room. How does a stick defeat 400 pounds of fur, muscle, and murderous intent? The answer lies not in brute strength, but in becoming the Arctic's greatest method actor. The Inuit hunters literally made themselves the prey in order to draw the wolf into the trap. The hunter will transform himself into the most tempting item on the Arctic menu, wounded prey, and they focus on every part of the performance. You might even see them limping and falling down and whimpering, just realistic and visible enough for the wolf to see, but not too exaggerated that it seems suspicious. In the next phase, a normal person would probably scream, run, or involuntarily empty their bladders. the hunter does nothing but act like prey that has collapsed. They have to stay completely still here, which means controlling their breathing. There are even no shallow puffs that fog the air. Sometimes hunters intensify their trap by camouflaging in seal fat and hides. Arctic wolves will smell that from any distance and would eventually sniff the hunter out. The Inuit used this method to exploit its territorial and curious behavior. Their muscles also stay completely still, so as the wolf comes, it won't suspect anything. And their eyes, they are half-lidded, gaze-focused middle distance to avoid any direct eye contact with the wolf. At this moment, the wolf might think it has found prey, not knowing that it's the actual prey. Once the wolf comes close enough, the hunter's stick that has been sharpened and hardened by fire, called a naluaktuk, is used to attack. When the wolf lunges, the hunter would immediately strike between the wolf's jaws, fatally injuring the animal due to the force of its own bite. Wolves don't half attack, so when their jaws snap shut, they lock on. The hunter's attack is a perfect way to inflict a heavy blow. The Inuit hunters sometimes did this alone, as this was the only way to fool the Arctic wolf and their powerful noses. Sometimes it was used as a rite of passage to add new hunters to the group. But in other cases, a second hunter can hide nearby and assist if the first hunter is unable to make a critical hit on the wolf. The smell of the seal's fat and blood is enough to distract the wolf from the scent of another human. Would you be daring enough to lay this trap on your own? Or would you rather have another hunter waiting for you? Let us know your thoughts in the comments and tag someone who won't even try. When the Inuit hunters didn't want to use themselves as the prey, they had another idea. They made nature's most brutal vending machine, where the wolves would have to pay with their own tongue. This is the wolf blade trap, also known very accurately as the blood popsicle. With this trap, there are no bullets, no chase, and no danger, just pure psychological warfare. It starts with a blade sharpened to surgical precision. Inuit traditionally made their knives from animal bone. Once they have the knife, they coat it in animal blood and wait for it to freeze. This doesn't take long since they're in the literal Arctic, but that's not all. Then the Inuit would dip it again and freeze it once more. This was repeated so that the knife would be covered with layer upon layer of frozen blood. It soon resembled a blood popsicle, as the deadly name implies. Now, the hunters would jam the hilt of the knife into the snow so it stands upright. They always leave it in areas where they suspect that the wolves would pass. Arctic wolves and their great sense of smell come into play again, as they can't resist the bloody treat. The wolf starts to lick the frozen blood and probably thinks it's in for a treat. The more it licks, the more there's blood. And all the ice has made its tongue numb. Before it knows it, it has reached the blade. The blade cuts the wolf's tongue, but that just makes more blood on top of what was already there, so the wolf won't stop licking. It's quite a bloody look as the wolf continues to lick and lick the blade despite the obvious signs that they are being harmed. The wolf would begin to get weak from the loss of blood, but it continues to lick it. Soon enough, the wolf's mouth is badly cut, and it continues to desperately attack the knife to taste more blood until it collapses from blood loss and dies. Once the Inuit return, they have a wolf to take home. The bloody popsicle trap exploits fatal traits of the Arctic wolf. The first one is that they can detect blood from a far distance, and once they lock onto the scent, they lose all rational thought. Arctic wolves also have pain blindness. The same thought that makes them keep licking the blade is the same that allows them to bite through frozen carcasses despite the pain, and wolves tend to have a feeding frenzy when blood is involved. The Inuit trap is genius and kind of horrifying. There's no chase required as the wolf does all the work. It's also silent and scent-based and uses the wolf's nature against it. So the Inuit don't just hunt Arctic wolves with a stick. Sometimes all they need is a blade and some animal blood. The Inuit didn't just rely on a single stick or blood popsicles to outsmart wolves. They had an arsenal of traps, so clever they'd make wily coyote jealous. One of their commonly used traps was the Inukshuk funnel, which you might understand as the Arctic's first drive-through. They arranged rocks in a path to attract the wolves, exploiting the natural tendency of wolves to follow lines. The rocks would guide the wolf to a hidden cliff or pit, which is the best place to keep it trapped and strike. The Inuit had no access to metal at the start, so their knives were made with animal bones that had been sharpened. One of these is the baleen blade, which was made with whalebone. It was bent under tension to be sharp and had enough strength to take a wolf down. Then they placed a delicate trap, where the wolf had to touch something, step somewhere, or pass by a place to trigger it. It sent the baleen blade flying with enough snapping force to instantly break a wolf's neck. The Inuit also came up with other types of traps to stop the wolves from going anywhere. They could camouflage the ground, covering a death hole with snow. Inside the hole could be standing knives that no wolf would want to encounter. These traps are usually placed in places where wolves usually pass. If the wolf passes through, it instantly falls into the trap and is injured or killed by the knives. The hunter can return later to pick up the wolf. Inuit hunters had to study and understand the nature of wolves for their traps to work, and this knowledge was passed down to the new generation, so no information was lost. With this, they could exploit the wolf weaknesses. They understood the curious nature of the canine. The Inuit hunters also had to find out the food caches of the wolves, so that they could place traps there, and their habitual patrol routes. By the time the Inuit children grew up, they could read all the wolf paths, like we can read subway maps. The Inuit didn't just trap wolves, they literally outsmarted them. In a land where you only have snow and animal resources, their techniques turned wolf psychology into a survival superpower. Although the Inuit didn't always want to eat wolves, they needed them for fur and considered the meat in tough times. They also had to protect themselves when their settlements were being disturbed and assaulted by wolves constantly. By surrounding their settlements with wolf traps and preventing them from coming near, the Inuit could keep their homes safe. The Inuit hunters were literally wolf GPS. They had paw print forensics, which could be used to find out the weight and speed of the wolf they were tracking. They could also look out for yellow snow patches, which revealed territory boundaries, and if there were many tracks, that meant the pack was moving. But imagine having to track wolves in a place where all you have is snow and ice. If there's a blizzard, all the tracks would be covered before you know it. Still, the Inuit hunters always had enough support, which was man's best friend. Arctic dogs weren't just furry pets that could keep the Inuit families warm in the igloo and pull the sled. They could also be used to track wolves. They could detect wolves up to 3 miles away with just their noses. The dogs could also be trained to lure wolves into ambush zones, and they were living alarms. Even when the humans couldn't perceive the danger, the dogs were more than enough to find out. The Inuit understood the nature of wolves and constantly taught the next generation, regardless of gender, how to set wolf traps. They exploited all the features of wolves, like their blood fever. They knew that wolves would be attracted to a limping human covered in seal blood or fat, or a bloody popsicle. In cases like this, scent overrides caution. They also exploit the curious nature of wolves, as they always want to investigate strange objects. By finding out where the wolf pack is moving or their territory, they can bait traps. For the Inuit, wolves weren't just predators and sometimes prey, they were also walking survival kits. Every part of the wolf served a purpose in the world's harshest environment. The most needed part of the wolf was the fur, which served as the ultimate performance fabric. The fur could be used to make hoods, which were attached to their parkas, creating breathable, ice-free zones around their face. They were also used to make mittens with the fur side out, shedding snow instantly. And the fur could make boot liners, which wicked moisture while retaining heat. Wolf meat wasn't the top choice for Inuit families, but it was the Arctic's last resort protein. When caribou, seals, and other animals were scarce, they considered wolves instead. In fact, the pups were considered delicacies, as they were softer. Adult meat was lean and tough, so it had to be boiled for hours to become edible. And the organ meats were prized for fat content when the caribou was scarce. The Inuit never wasted anything, so even the other parts of the wolf were used. They could carve the bones into knife handles and fish hooks for other usage. Even the sinew could be used as thread for attaching objects, and the skulls were placed in front of the community, warning other wolves to refrain from attacking. Wolf accessories were also used by the Inuit. They could make claw necklaces, something that you could see worn by the hunters. They also added wolf teeth to their belts, giving them the confidence to go and catch another prey. The Inuit and wolves go way back, frenemies with benefits. The Inuit low-key admire wolves because they have a lot to learn from them. They are the OGs of teamwork and pack mentality, and the Inuit have learned a lot from the wolves in terms of hunting. The wolf is seen as a keen and successful hunter, which offers a lot of knowledge to the Inuit. They were also family-oriented, and let's not forget the spiritual significance of the wolves to the Inuit. They were prominently in Inuit folklore and spiritual beliefs, often representing strength and wisdom. Wolves weren't all charm. The Inuit liked to learn from them from afar and could set traps for them when necessary, but they also had to stay away from them because the wolves were annoying food thieves. They could steal food from the Inuit community storage, which was pretty frustrating after all the stress to hunt it. Some Inuit communities also believed that wolves were spirits in disguise, so they didn't want to come anywhere near them. And let's not forget that these are dangerous wild animals. No one wants to spend time with them. Let's be real, most of us wouldn't last 5 minutes in the Arctic before crying for a space heater. But the Inuit? They turned a stick into a wolf's worst nightmare. If you end up in front of a wolf with just a stick, what will you do? Let's know in the comments. And if you're craving more insane survival skills by the Inuit, hit subscribe and like. Thanks for watching.